Put our hands together for Jono.
Okay, so hi, I'm Jono and my screen is flickering wildly. That's going to make this really, and the lights as well. Wow, now it's green. Excellent. Right, so I'm a independent technical SEO consultant based in the UK. I will speak at this speed throughout. I'm here repping the media team and project planner, progress planner, said the name of the thing. Take a look at that. That's my brief plug. I'm going to talk to you about all sorts of stuff today that's hopefully hopefully interesting. I spend a lot of my time looking at people's websites. As do many of you, I evaluate how they're coded and structured and built as a technical SEO in order to say this could be better or faster or sleeker or more modern in ways that might theoretically affect how Google and other search engines understand those websites, which hopefully drives money and revenue for the businesses in those cases. I spend a lot of time saying you should fix this thing in this order in the attempt to drive these metrics and drive these outcomes. For many of the websites I see, yes, they suck. Yes, they're broken. Yes, they're built using outdated technologies and approaches built by developers who don't know what they don't know about best practice. But their biggest problems are rarely their technology. Their websites suck, they're slow, etc. But they face a bigger existential problem, and that's that their tactics and strategies are underwhelming. They're cookie cutter. They pick a channel, whether it's SEO or PPC or affiliates, whatever else it is, they spend some money on ads, they try and drive some traffic to a landing page, they try and hope to convert a small subset of that into a paying customer, they try and retarget the rest to drive them back again, and they iterate and optimize that process ever so slightly faster than their competitors. For many businesses, this is how the internet works. It's how the internet has always worked, it's how we've all made money. And this has worked reasonably well until now. I think that rat race, that is everything that we have ever known about how to make money and succeed online, is now about to fail. Because I think that tomorrow, everything changes. I think right now the internet as we know it is undergoing a series of radical changes, some of which you'll be familiar with and some of which may come as a surprise, which mean that if we keep on doing what we've always done, the way we've always done it, our businesses will fail. I want to talk to you about content, not my usual topic. Because for almost everybody here in some respect will do or have been involved in the act of quote-unquote content marketing, even if we don't call it that. Our websites, our pages, our services, our products, our information, our blog posts, the pictures and videos we put on the internet are content. We use content to describe our things, to differentiate our propositions. We use images and words to tell our stories, to attract, to educate, to influence, to convince and convert. At least that's the theory. We live in a world where almost everything is becoming increasingly commodified. Traditional USPs like price, availability, proximity, even talent, etc. can be increasingly easily disrupted. They're a race to the bottom. Anything that can even be remotely scaled, you are competing on price against Amazon and probably Google themselves in a race to the bottom on price. So your content, the stories you tell, the messages you weave, the brand you build, the ideas that you create, is probably one of the most important, maybe the only thing that differentiates you from your many competitors, many of which will be cheaper or faster or closer in ways you can't compete with or keep up with. Yet most content marketing is done for SEO or by SEOs or involves SEO people and not the rest of the organization. It's owned by the SEO team, it's part of the SEO strategy, and its success is measured and defined in terms of SEO metrics. Now that is easier to understand why when you look at recent research from Klarna, the payment gateway, they say that 70% of all purchase journeys online involve search at some point, and 40% of all purchase journeys online start with search. So even if you're not into SEO, if it's not your thing, if you're not interested, it's important to understand the huge amounts of money that flow through this ecosystem. And competition is incredibly fierce. And paying to compete with ads is incredibly expensive, especially when you're right up against the giants like Google and Amazon. So the idea that SEO and content can somehow be used to strategically sidestep all of those costs and magically deliver a whole bunch of free content is obviously quite appealing. So again, even if you're not into SEO, and I apologize and forgive you, it's important to understand that a lot of the content that we see and consume on the web, that we build as agencies, that we write as business owners, that we commission as agencies, etc., a lot of that exists because it plays some kind of role in this SEO process of attracting and convincing and converting traffic. Which is why almost every site that we build or interact with or use or have probably includes some kind of blog or a resource center, somewhere explicitly designed to house this kind of content. Stuff that isn't your core product or service descriptors, stuff that isn't your about page or core proposition, but all the other stuff. everything that sits outside of that, which means that most blogs, as we know, are just a muddle of information, of press releases from 2012 by the CEO that have never been updated, case studies that don't really fit anywhere else in the website because it wasn't designed in a way that it needed to anticipate those, product or service information that really ought to be elsewhere but nobody really considered how that would work, because it's the only place on your site that kind of sits outside the constraints of those templates and is open and free-form in a way that many of your core templates won't be. This is concerning because I think that content probably shouldn't be an afterthought, something that's crammed in elsewhere on your site because it doesn't really fit the core of your site. Like, the word content means the thing that fills the thing that the thing is. So the fact that it sits awkwardly over here because we didn't design for it, because we didn't plan for it, because we didn't understand its strategic role in people's buying cycles, etc., feels like an incredible dysfunction. How is it the last thing that gets considered in a design and build and deployment process? How is it that we create and get the content when it's already too late to work out its role in influencing how people behave on our websites? This is baffling to me. The sad truth, more often than not, is even beyond that, that the content is just a shill for products or services or delivering internal links throughout a site for SEO reasons. It's largely you and your business talking about you and to you for your ostensible benefit. Nobody's really thinking about how customers and broader audiences are going to interact and derive value from this. It only exists as a way to kind of crudely sucker in people from search engines so that you can shout to them about your Black Friday sales. Just to prove I'm not being entirely pessimistic, here's a couple of examples that I genuinely picked at random from my town. Now this one was fairly remote, but this is a dentist website. This is their blog. This is the most recent post at the time. I'm going to check my notes because this is fun. 10 reasons you should consider teeth whitening. Okay, that already feels like a bit of a stretch. Who is this content for? What problems does this solve for what audiences? Who is reading this and then immediately sharing it to their elderly parents saying, look at this incredible resource I found. I'm going to bookmark this and print it off and laminate it because it's so life-changing. It says the brand name 9 times in that text and there are only 10 things in the list. This is just them talking about themselves to people who don't care. It's not building an emotional response. This isn't a sales page or a landing page. If it was, I could forgive it and it might not be terrible. But this is a blog post. It is in theory meant to be an authored piece of emotionally driven, impactful, creative content with an opinion written by somebody who cares, trying to convince somebody of something, or educate them, or attract them. It does none of those things. It is objectively garbage. This is another one. This is a local dentist company. It says, and it's quite clearly written deliberately with the intent to rank for the keyword cosmetic dentist in York, which I can thankfully tell you it does no such thing because it's garbage. In this article it says, we will explore 4 incredible services that a cosmetic dentist in York can provide. Yeah, incredible services. Yeah, right. This is generic, it's banal, it's filler. Who is this for? Why does it exist? What problems does it solve, and for who? Harder question, what value does this page add to the internet as a whole? To the collective corpus of human knowledge and our collective experience? How much value is this adding? Would anyone miss it if it was taken offline? You. Oh, yeah. To clarify, it's not just dentists. Now, I know nothing about cars, but this is a site that helps you research information on replacing and maintaining, etc. This is a page about car air filters. I don't know what that is, but I can imagine there are some people who might Google, well, how do I fix this thing? How much is it going to cost, etc. Great, okay, they've got questions, they've supplied answers, except this is the entire content of that page. And it says barely anything. It manages to say air filter 16 times without describing any of the actual information. The big revelation is that car air filters filter air in cars. And if you want to sign up for their thing, they've got a form. This is clearly just designed to rank, but it is objectively awful. They're hoping they can attract 1,000 visitors and have 2% of those fill out a form and somehow monetize that, and they do this at scale. If you are a search engine, like Google, whose most important KPI is user satisfaction and the quality of that experience, would you index this? Would you allow your users to be sent to it? I don't think so. I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples like this, and I won't bore you with them because it's soul-destroying. Something is going really, really profoundly wrong here. We have all collectively vaguely agreed that content marketing as an idea is quite important, and we ought to tell stories, and differentiating our brands is a good thing, and yet we are producing blogs and resource centers which have this kind of content at scale across the internet for SEO reasons. Except it's not working. None of those examples get any traffic, as best as I can tell from the third-party tools I'm running. Yet those websites are still producing more of those articles. There's 3 more dentist, cosmetics, and whitening tips since I've put these slides together. They're spending money with an external agency, or worse yet, doing it in-house for reasons that I don't even think they understand. What's causing this disconnect? I think that a large part of this content starts out in some kind of research process. Somebody, probably in an agency, probably does some kind of demand modeling. They pick a bunch of keywords, they look at search volumes, they maybe at a push do a bit of actual audience research. And they start from the assumption that if they find a page that's doing okay, they can write the content, they can improve it, they can put the right keywords in, and they can maybe nudge Google's ranking of that page slightly higher than their competitors. They can drive some traffic and they can convert a subset. Say pick 100 or so of the best looking opportunities based on where do they rank, where do their competitors rank, where have they got content, where haven't, how might all of this work, and they produce an enormous spreadsheet. And they say something like, this keyword has 10,000 searches a month, we currently rank number 3, we think we can produce some content that's marginally better than the people who rank in number 2, maybe displace them. And they do this at scale. And this is a lot of what most kind of day-to-day SEO agencies end up doing with their time. It's pretty unpleasant. Partly because they neglect to consider that there are 1,000 other companies that employ 1,000 other SEO people who look just like them, doing the same research from the same data, coming to the same conclusions, saying this keyword has 10,000 searches, we rank number 4, we think we can produce something nominally better than the people in number 3, and they're just really swapping positions and burning money on creating more and more of these terrible pages. Not to mention that all of the data that they use is fundamentally flawed. Search volume data and all the stuff that the keyword tools like SEMrush and the Systrixes that do are flawed in all sorts of fun ways. They aggregate, they round, they use thresholding, etc., which means you never truly understand what you're actually looking at. Rank trackers are incredibly useful as research tools to understand how do people search and what kind of problems do they have, but they're not great for cherry picking a to-do list to write direct articles from. Not just that, but they bias you towards picking the kinds of keywords that these tools monitor, which are invariably skewed towards high purchase intent, high search volume, expensive cost per clicks, which means you miss a huge amount of opportunity to write content that's designed to help people who search with the kinds of keywords that you can't directly convert from, that are unlikely to buy at that moment in time from, or that have very few people searching for. You miss this entire threshold of the kind of content you ought to be producing because your research says that you should be writing 10 cosmetic dentistry tips in your. And then when you get to the point where you are ready to execute and you have all this planned out and mapped, it turns out that it's actually fundamentally difficult to write authentically good, helpful content and resources because your product or your price or your proposition maybe aren't that good. Nobody in the marketing team has ever touched or interacted with the service or product that you sell, and they can't even find out how to get hold of it. And the few people in the business who could theoretically have an opinion and create some valuable content are either too busy because they're the CMO, or they're not willing to put their name and face to content that you produce, which is symptomatic of a whole other set of issues we'll get to, or they're terrible writers. And all these kind of challenges make it really hard to actually say we want to put some words on the internet that help people. It's really hard. So it's easier just to outsource 2 blog posts a week to a cheap external agency, which is what most companies end up doing, to people who don't have close personal experience with the product or the service that they're talking about. But now at least you have somebody culpable who you can fire when the results don't come in, really, really nice. But you also don't consider that the freelancers and the agencies you've outsourced to are the same ones that your competitors who look just like you are also outsourcing to, who are doing the same research, and you're producing the same pages to compete with each other with the same agencies and freelancers. I see this all the time. Worse yet, you give it to the intern who knows nothing, who's only been there 2 weeks, and they write generic articles. The word article is such a red flag, right? Like, produce a guide would be an article. What? Why are dentists producing articles? They're just putting words on the internet on pages with keywords in. They're not creating value. Worse yet, the intern gives it to ChatGPT, which just regurgitates what your competitors are already saying, using different phrasing, not considering that their sites are also learning from your sites, and your articles are learning from their articles, which the intern is feeding in, yada yada. You are just creating this miasma of keywordy pages. It's really unpleasant. Some SEO tools try and get around this by trying to evaluate differences between pages on different ranking results. So they might say, oh, it looks like in the top 10 results, pages use the word banana 3.8 times more than you, and they have 2.4 more images. So you go, okay, I will tick this off, and now you've just kind of reinforced this soup of content, because then their recommendations are feeding off your recommendations, which are feeding off the ChatGPT content that the intern wrote. We're all building these sites, we're all managing these sites, we're all selling these sites, and they are just churning soupy garbage. Maybe you're not cutting any of those corners. Maybe you are actually delivering genuine value and you're doing the hard work. Maybe you're sitting down every day and opening up your website and writing stuff using an SEO scoring tool like a Yoast or a Rank Math, and you're using an incredible support process like a progress planner. Except these tools quite often have no concept of competitive gap. So you might get a green light in a Yoast that says you've done a great job, but you don't know how far the gap between you and a competitor is. Like if you rank second, you don't know how far it is to first. So you might have done something that's pretty pointless. Worse yet, they have no concept, at least not yet, of utility. I can score a green light in any SEO plugin by writing a bunch of content with the right keywords that adds no measurable value to the human experience, that doesn't help users, that doesn't answer their questions, that isn't helpful or inherently good, but it's going to pass all those tests. The good news is that this no longer works, broadly speaking, except that's a lie, it really does, which is really sad. Google is not perfect, not yet. You can still rank your website slightly better by being slightly less rubbish than your competitors. And a lot of that kind of churn and ebb and flow we see of the internet is just brands and dentists rewriting these articles to be slightly less bad than the next person ever. And essentially, if that's all the content that there is, Google still has to rank something, right? You don't ever see a page of results where there's no number 4 because there wasn't anything good. The stuff just rises to the surface. That does mean there's an opportunity for the people who do good content and helpful content and genuinely add value to the internet. Okay, good news. Google's concept of EEAT, hands up if you haven't heard of this. Some excellent, lots excellent. So Google have reframed a whole bunch of their quality considerations. Like, what does quality mean? It's super ephemeral. EEAT is much nicer. It is experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, which are still hard to measure, but a much easier thing to grasp. Your content should have those attributes. It should be written by somebody who is a demonstrable expert in a subject area, who has touched the product they're talking about, who has a background that qualifies them to have an opinion, working for a brand that isn't trying to cheat you. Sounds radical, but that's most of the content on the web. Content that's anonymous or isn't well researched, or which is about a sensitive topic which disagrees with established norms, or is about health or finance that isn't quite robust or full of typos, or which exhibits any kind of those authority gaps, will find it harder and harder to get indexed by Google and search engines and ChatGPT and all these other new systems. And if you're not getting indexed, then nothing else happens after that. Google's helpful content update has fundamentally changed the landscape of the web. It is increasingly demanding that websites don't have unhelpful content. It's like the unhelpful content update, really. It aims to reward scenarios where visitors feel that they had a satisfying experience. Think back to that dental sign. It's not a satisfying experience. You have to make your pages useful. You have to make them helpful. You have to ensure that your pages help the user. None of us are building websites that are designed to help the user. We're building websites to put landing pages and gravity forms on them to try and get people to click to sign up to a thing or buy something. Our motivations have to change, otherwise our sites don't get indexed. If they don't get indexed, they don't get visitors. It's just really hard if you already have an established website where you haven't started from scratch thinking this way. You've got a lot of work to unpick your past sins. These are just the latest round of kind of updates and ideological shifts we're seeing from Google, which form part of a broader pattern and a journey where they are trying to surface content written from and written by and written for real humans. A lot of the tactical churn and mass production stuff that we've seen that has worked to a degree to date will get harder and harder to do. And if with people building websites and building the technology that builds websites, we need to think about how that manifests, because it's probably not the case that we should be encouraging people to have a blog and write some articles in the way that we have historically, because that's now going to do more harm than good to those organizations if they don't do the hard work themselves. There is so much more coming. Updates to Google Core Web Vitals system, which require that we be faster. Updates to surface discussion and forum content from people with real opinions. How many of your dental clients are involved in communities on the web where the opinions of people in those communities influences what they do? How many of you have visibility on that? How many of you are influencing that? How many of you have built a forum in the last decade? Forums back, who knew? If your site isn't evolving or devolving in the case of forums, you are going to be left behind. I think content marketing for SEO, the way that we've done it for the last 20 years, will no longer work. At least it's going to get harder and harder in competitive spaces. To gain access to Google's audiences, your content, website's content, needs to help those audiences. And that might involve selling to them. It might involve having a lead gen form. But it probably involves educating and guiding and supporting in ways that we've never really built content for before. That's going to get harder and harder still, because there's some even broader macro factors happening outside of this which make it pretty tricky, starting with the fact that the internet is now full. It's a weird thing to say, but it's quite an interesting thought experiment because we now have, or will imminently have, functionally infinite amounts of mediocre, infinite content soup created by and for those SEO processes, filling up those blogs, writing derivative versions of those dental posts over and over again. And even if it's not technically full, Google's servers and capacity and appetite to digest all of this crap is not infinite. They have to deal with trillions and trillions of spam and low-quality URLs and posts about teeth whitening that they're not interested in. They have less incentive than ever to crawl all of the stuff that we're producing. And if they're not even crawling it, if they're not seeking it out because they know it's not likely to be helpful, you don't get indexed, you don't get visitors, you don't get sales. The whole funnel breaks. There was some fascinating research on Twitter a while ago saying that Google's index is only 400 billion URLs. There are many, 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 many trillions of URLs, at least, on the web that they could choose to crawl and index. They are already being very selective. Why would they choose to index your article about teeth whitening? And yeah, companies say, well, we're the best in our sector and we've been around for 200 years and we're very, yes, very nice. But this page, that doesn't have an author, that's got typos in it, that doesn't solve a clear purpose, that was clearly designed to manipulate Google without any consideration for the user, why would you index this page? It's a tough question to ask when you go critically through your content, and it's a very important one to do so. If Google had to drop another URL to make room for this one, why would they do that? It's a good thought experiment. Finite storage isn't their only problem. There's other stuff happening. Search engines generally are on an evolutionary trail that's not finished. So we started once upon a time, you searched and you got a list of 10 blue links and you thought, that one looks vaguely familiar, that one looks trustworthy, I'll click the third one. We've all conditioned ourselves to kind of evolve through that. Now as you search, you're much more likely to get tools, widgets, answers directly in the search results, rich formats, things that solve your problem in situ without you having to visit a website. That is existentially concerning, at least it should be to all of us. Google have got smart enough that they can extract the content and information from the websites that we're building and the content that we're producing and just solve people's problems in the search engine when they search for them. Nobody clicks that website, the visits never count, the analytics never fires, nobody sees the lead gen form or the Black Friday banner, nobody buys anything. The users have a great experience because their problems are being solved in situ, but it does start to raise the question, what value are our websites adding beyond just summarizing a point? I can get teeth whitening tips directly from Google without visiting a dentist website. So what is that website for? And if we're building it and maintaining it and optimizing it over time, maybe it should look and behave differently. Maybe it should solve different problems. It's a really hard challenge to try and work out what the answer is for each business in that case, but just continuing as we always have is a route to failure. You've probably seen this referred to as zero-click searches if you've come across it. The idea that there's an increasing propensity for people to search and Google just solved the problem in situ. Circa 50% of searches, depending on which data you look at, in the US last year were zero-click searches. People seeking information, people seeking answers. None of those people clicked on the websites that we build and manage and maintain. What is WordPress for? Interesting. That's problematic. It makes it much harder for those sites to monetize and be successful, etc. What's even more interesting is that's just chapter 1, because now search engines can synthesize results. Increasingly, we're going to see summary content and answers directly in the search results, which is generated on the fly from their understanding of the broader corpus. Like this example, this is Google's search generative experience. This is a flavor of where we're going. Here you can see the implications of somebody searching a much more kind of human experience, where I have a complex question with lots of moving parts, and Google has created a complex answer that factors in all of those things in a way that your individual websites probably don't, or maybe even can't, or won't for commercial reasons because you want the click, etc. This is going to drive zero-click searches up even further, but even this is just the beginning. Google increasingly knows enough about things to not to need to crawl or index or consume our content. Many topics and flavors of information are largely immutable. Recipes is a really interesting example. There aren't many new ingredients or new ways of cooking or new food sources. So if I Google blueberry and salmon spaghetti bolognese with a peanut sauce, which nobody should ever Google, it can create me a recipe on the fly. It knows enough about these concepts, it has enough information, it's consumed enough recipe websites that it can just synthesize me a result on demand. If I'm a recipe site, what value am I adding? Does the internet need another lasagna recipe? I've relied on publishing that and having ads running and driving traffic and ranking for keywords, etc. Google doesn't need that. Users don't want that. They want the better experience that Google can provide. What are we building? Websites with articles. They can also synthesize answers to complex problems, like find me a holiday for a week in July for under €2,000 for a family of 4 with an elderly parent, no more than 2 hours flight time from Manchester or London Airport, within walking distance of a beach with a child-friendly pool with a good restaurant nearby. Imagine the website you would have to build and the filtering mechanisms you would need to have in order to make that a fluid, dynamic, friendly experience. Imagine the cost and overhead of maintaining it and updating it and gathering the data and indexing. You can't. No one can. No one who doesn't have Google's index and already trained models. We can't compete with this. So what are we building? Websites with articles? It's probably not the right answer. This happens in entire categories of queries. I'm calling this solved query spaces, where things are immutable and Google knows enough to not need our content anymore. It's bad news for recipe bloggers. It's bad news for any kind of intermediaries and affiliates who are just aggregating or summarizing. Google no longer needs that information. We need to find alternative business models. Scary stuff. Your content, interestingly, is a risk to theirs. So if the content that's already out there is training these systems and LLMs and they're learning from it, what happens if there's demonstrably bad or wrong information in there? That stuff can get picked up and perpetuated and encoded into their systems in ways that produce interesting results, like this. Like when you Google, can you melt eggs? And Google has learned from Quora, from an AI-generated response, so its own AI-generated response says, yes, you can. So you can't melt eggs. It's not a thing. But your crappy content on your crappy blog or your client's crappy blog, talking about dental and teeth whitening and car air fresheners, is now an existential risk to Google. So not only will they not come and crawl an index and discover and rank your content, the more of that kind of legacy flavor of content you have, the less likely they are to trust your entire site at all. You are not a source of data that they want to ingest. We have to unpick all of this thinking and all of this content. This is already happening. This isn't speculative, scary future stuff. This is happening now. I spend a lot of time on Twitter watching this kind of stuff unfold. I won't walk you through all of these, but here's a bunch of people who used to have very successful affiliate websites, quite sophisticated technical SEOs, people doing great scaled content stuff, who are saying, I've never had a website take this long to index, or I have a website with great links and great articles that's only getting 1 view a day. It makes no sense. I've published lots of unique content. I hate that phrase. Unique says nothing to value. Unique says nothing to utility, to helpfulness, to authenticity, to original thought. Those are the concepts that we need to be considering. Unique content. So what? Reconfiguring words and letters in different patterns. So what? Adds nothing. What else? This changes how people search. People start to use longer tail queries. They search for phrases with conditions because we train ourselves out of not trusting Google's results and starting to ask it longer form questions. We get more assisted search where we go on multi-step journeys. Websites play less and less of a role in this flow, at least at the commercial end of the funnel they do. One of the implications of this is that we are all now blind. So all of the bad keyword research data and spreadsheets we were building originally are now even worse because people aren't visiting our websites, because they're not behaving in the same way in search, because they're not searching using the same kind of easily aggregatable queries. It's much more fragmented and long tail. We have no idea. People aren't visiting our websites, so our analytics doesn't fire. We don't have impression data. We can't tie behavior back to keywords. We have no idea what's happening. All of the kind of conventional mechanical flavors of SEO will stop being as easy to use. Also, interestingly, paid search, an area I'm not massively keen on, but it's quite interesting. Paid search happens in 2 places. Adverts are shown in the search results, where people now search far fewer times and in different ways and in ways that are harder to show adverts against. And on websites for retargeting purposes and to show banners, where people never click or visit. The entire commercial side of the web is also straining and fragmenting, and Google has no answers to how these economic situations will be resolved. They have no model that will power the future, that put some ads in the results and hope that it kind of balances out. But there's all sorts of interesting pressures where the entire commercial capitalistic system of how the web has worked is starting to fracture because we're solving problems better. Interesting. This has huge implications for anyone whose website collates, compares. Because you don't have access to Google's index or their size or scale, you can't move and update as fast as they can, and you can't synthesize stuff at the same scale and the same level of accuracy as they can. If you're just collecting things, 18 best places to go in July, 6 best types of hats, Google can do that far better than you ever could. It's time to assess your business model. What do we do? I think 3 things. 3 big scary things. One is actually spend some time trying to solve your audience's problems. This is a radical thing to say for people who are building websites and running businesses that are designed ostensibly to sell things and make money. But you can't do that unless you've already done this. This is the cost of accessing Google's audience. And I say audience specifically, not just customers, not users, but your whole in-market segment. You have to help all of these people in the hopes that they have good experiences, that they interact with your pages in a way that Google can measure that looks like they're having a good time and they're succeeding on their search journeys. You have to hope that some small subset of them will retweet your stuff, will like you, will recommend you. You have to run billboards to recommend people about your brand, etc. You have to actually do branding and marketing in a way that interacts with real humans. You have to research the problems they have at the beginning of their journeys, when they first become problem aware, and start to help them through that, rather than just shouting at them at the point where they Google something that implies that they might be ready to spend. What do they wish that they'd known earlier, 6 months before they embarked on those long, complex, winding search journeys? Nobody's actually talking to their audiences in ways that discover this and creating content that solves those problems, because it doesn't obviously connect to a measurable outcome. You will not measure ROI from this because you won't connect those behaviors to the outcomes, but you have to win hearts and minds 6 months ago before you can convert people with your content today. Talking to people is scary and expensive, and it doesn't scale well. There are tools that shortcut this. Try to avoid mentioning specific tools, but these two are really good. Mark Williams-Cook's Also Asked is great for scraping Google to evaluate the people also asked questions. Really good insight into what kinds of questions do they have, what problems do they have. Again, do not take this, put it into a spreadsheet and order them by search volume and create articles about teeth whitening. Use this to understand the kind of topical areas and problems that people articulate. These aren't keywords, these are humans with questions. It's a much better way of thinking about it. Also good is keywordinsights.ai on the right here, which clusters and groups topically similar content keywords and compares it to your content and says, this page is a little bit muddied, it's about too many things. It's really nice, kind of neutral way of looking at it. Okay, more, faster. That's big. We can sort this down and narrow down to an insight. You need to overlap the problems that your business can solve authentically and uniquely well for an audience. What do you bring to the conversation that's not the stuff you sell? For a group of people, where can you help? About what? Who are the people who can do that? What are their names? What are their faces? Where are they from? Why are they qualified? Not the sales bit, the expertise, the unique opinions, the interesting points of view. Which trustworthy humans can you put in front of that? With names and faces and demonstrable expertise, with backgrounds, with university degrees, with whatever matters to that space, with education, with support networks, with connections to reputable people. Maybe they're employees, maybe they're experts that you can in-house, maybe there are other mechanisms here. Don't fake it, don't create fake personas, don't buy in third-party expertise and pass it off as your own. Breed or create or expose your own talent. What interesting ideas and opinions and insights do those people have? That's what should be on your blog. Humans having opinions about things. Imagine like a business blog actually being a named human blogging about something that they care about. I've been using this example since 2015, nobody's still naming it. In 2015, my TV started making a weird buzzing sound at low volumes. Brrr, horrible, confusing, don't know what's going on. I Googled it, do I need a new TV? Can I repair this? I can't repair anything. Is the cable loose? I don't know, I don't understand. The results were a set of garbage forum listings from people asking similar questions. Not one brand was there with, okay, let me help you walk through this, let me help you understand. Not trying to sell to me, but imagine if that experience, if I'd seen, I don't know, Panasonic, and they'd had a guide saying, oh, actually it's this thing, and you can probably make this change, but it might be easier to repair or replace, yada, yada. I might not have bought with them, might not have gone click add to cart new TV, but on the 3, 4, 6 months that followed, when I read other content, and when I saw their logo in the shops, I might have been more inclined to trust their brand or remember them or to ultimately buy. We affect what happens next. I think this is a critical concept for modern SEO. Not to try and convert now, not to try and rank highest with the keyword of your choice, but when audiences are searching to try and solve their problems, can you influence what happens next? Can you steer them in a slightly different direction? Can you educate? Can you inform? Can you assist? So that down the line, when they get to the point where they're searching with a commercial keyword, where they get to the point where they're seeing ads are ready to buy or get their wallet out, you are trusted and you are known. Win the hearts and minds much earlier on. And of course that's incredibly hard to measure, and there aren't any good examples for how, or good answers to how businesses can put the infrastructure and tracking in place to monitor this, because rightly so, it feels much more like classic marketing. Like it's the 1950s again, like we have to believe that reputation matters. Like we have to believe that people can be convinced to like us and remember us in ways that are hard to quantify. We got distracted by keywords and search volumes and spreadsheets, and we did bad marketing, we did bad advertising. We just shouted kind of mechanically, and now we have to clean that up. You can still try and influence what happens now. This is idealistic. You can still spend more on ads. You can still compete more at the bottom of the funnel. You can have a faster, better, more aggressive e-commerce website that competes on price and availability and other things. But you will be right up against Amazon, and you'll be right up against Google, and you'll be right up against ChatGPT and Perplexity, who are all these other businesses who are designed to compete at that bottom of the funnel. Where we can play and where our websites can be helpful is far earlier in the research cycles. This is critically important because the thing this does and what it achieves is it removes your competitor's influence. If I'm researching a TV, I will visit 20 websites, comparisons, reviews, articles, manufacturers, across 2 weeks, across 4 different devices, any considered purchase. And I will see and be influenced by content from many different brands and people. By changing what happens next, by diverting that path, by educating, supporting, helping, some of that competitor content is no longer seen. They don't see the special offer. They don't get convinced to click on this link. You change the outcomes. Very quickly, in 2009, I worked for a digital marketing agency, a full-service in-house thing, and one of our big clients was Weller, hair care brands, products, shampoo, etc., etc. And I joined the company, and I laughed at this website because it was brochure-Weller, and it was flashy and interactive, but it didn't sell anything. They didn't have any analytics. They had no tracking. Their SEO was unsophisticated. Their content was wishy-washy, and it was monthly guides to all sorts of lovely pink things. Didn't understand. So I fought. And over 5 years, we built an incredibly sophisticated e-commerce engine. We built the most sophisticated analytics setup I have ever touched. Multi-cross domain, cookie swapping, all sorts of stuff that their company wasn't designed to be able to do, but we fudged it in anyway. Amazing. And what happened? Their sales tanked. Their offline sales in stores, in physical retail, tanked. Because their website wasn't designed to sell. It was designed so that when you were at the supermarket and you saw 30 different cosmetic products on the shelf, you went, that's the one I read that really useful article from. That's the one with the logo I recognize. That bottle looks familiar. That's at scale. That is how we should be thinking about content and SEO. In 30 seconds or less, become a publisher in truth. The SEO industry said become a publisher in 2015. They thought that it meant write lots of blog posts. That was never what it means. Real publishers research, they go out, they create original value, they put boots on the ground, they do thinking, they create numbers, they evaluate, they create value. Go and do that faster than AI systems and your competitors can. Read what Blair McGregor says, that if you're not distinct in your editorial, who has an editorial policy for their website? If you don't have a distinct editorial policy, never mind an editorial policy at all, then you are going to get left behind, yada yada. If your content looks like everybody else's, you are going to get left behind. If you're doing anything other than just summarizing, that's going to be problematic. Not because expertise and trust are ranking factors, but because these are the kinds of things that users want when they're making decisions. Make your site faster, go past core web vitals. These things are also important as part of user experience. Again, this is super hard to measure. It's super hard to measure until it stops working. Because like a niche site lady, she should have been visiting places in person, emailing companies, going deep into forums, adding sections with her own experience, and analyzing data, drawing conclusions. These are the things our website should be doing because they're the things that AI can't or won't yet, and they're the things that your competitors won't. This is what our website should be for, and none of our websites are. They're just blogs with articles. This sounds like a lot of work, so the alternative is go and compete elsewhere. We're not allowed to listen to Robert's talk tomorrow. Part of one of the answers to this might be that the internet, we know it isn't the best destination for this. These are screenshots from TikTok, which is definitely a search engine fueled by content, where you should be competing for brand discovery and engagement and preference. But what I think is really interesting is this is the same content in TikTok, in Google. Ooh, this gets interesting. Are our websites configured and capable and designed to power and fuel and interact with and compete with this kind of content? Not so much. You're seeding 30% of the results here to a very different type of search and content consumption because all we've got are articles. This isn't a few edge cases. This is TikTok's meteoric rise in Google. This is Reddit's meteoric rise in Google. This is Amazon's meteoric rise in Google. LinkedIn's meteoric rise. All of these ecosystems are now part of the surface area that we need to be considering. And our websites play one small part in the experiences that users have when they're browsing these things. If they're not connected to and from and integrated into these surfaces, and your competitors are, you miss out on discovery, you miss out on preference, you miss out on helping and solving problems because you've got the wrong kind of content in the wrong kind of place because all you've got is teeth whitening articles. It's the same with Eventbrite, it's the same with a dozen other platforms. We need to be thinking about WordPress's role in a more distributed form of content publishing and consumption. Robert will ramble about that tomorrow afternoon. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah, do all the things at all these points. This is very, very marketing. Essentially, compete not just elsewhere, but everywhere. You need to influence that. Right, in summary, I beg all of you to stop producing content, my screen's flipping, that doesn't create value. Value is hard to create. Value is your moat, value is your differentiator. Do the research, employ the experts, send them to the places. Don't wait for your client to send you the content until after the site's built, because they never will. Ask the hard questions. Invest in doing less but better. Don't have 1,000 garbage thin pages. Have 3 incredible resources. Stop writing articles. Stop producing articles. Stop allowing articles to be produced. Stop building websites which have places where articles live. Something has already gone horribly wrong in the strategy before that point. Start to think about how you can help an audience to solve their problems. Do the research and understand what pain points people have, and start to think about how that manifests as content on your site. Where does it make sense to publish those different types of content? Is it a blog? Is it a help center? Is it just actually on your product pages itself? We so often default to going, okay, this is an article that goes over here. None of this is set in stone. None of these are rules. If you have a blog, understand what it is and isn't. A blog post is not useful, is not good, is not valuable if it doesn't have a named real human with a face, with a title and a role and a background and a history and authenticity and demonstrable expertise and an opinion. If it lacks any of those, it's just an article, and the world doesn't need any more articles. Use content to build trust and preference and recall. These things are measurable. You can survey people, you can do NPS scoring, you can ask your audience, do you trust and recognize this logo? These are the metrics that we should be looking to optimize for, not for rankings, not for impressions or clicks, not for visits. This is what matters. Be a kind of brand that users would expect to see in the search results. Become the result they would expect to see there, so that when you're not there, it's concerning and confusing. That's how you rank high. Almost lastly, there's a famous SEO called Cyrus Shepard who in 2017 came up with this phrase, be the last click. I really like this. The idea that when people are going through complex search journeys, if you are the final destination, Google can see this and measure it and understand it. If you're the last stop, you can imply that the user found what they were looking for. They've completed their journey. You were the best resource of all the places they went. I hate this, it's wrong. Be the first click. The moment a user articulates a problem where they're confused, where they're angry, where they don't know, where they don't even have the vocabulary, where they're starting to explore, be the resource that they find so that you influence what happens next. That is a far more powerful way of thinking. And then also, yeah, be the last click, be both. I am not saying that content marketing isn't a thing, or that we should market without content, or that blogs are inherently bad. What I am saying is please go and look at the role of content on your sites and your client sites and the sites that you build, and the role of content in WordPress as we build that and how the sites that we build and expect behave. Please just set your content marketing content playbook on fire. Challenge what content means to you. We're all running on autopilot and the game has fundamentally changed. Now we need to reevaluate the role of content and our relationships with it. That is a terrifying job if you've already got large sites with established content, or you have to transform expectations with clients, all of these things, but we have to do it now. Because ChatGPT, Google, Amazon, etc. are already ahead of us. They're already doing a better job, TikTok is doing a better job of educating, of empowering, of helping, of supporting, of winning the hearts and minds of our users than our articles on our websites that nobody clicks or visits are. This is only going to get harder, and we are already probably too late. So, good luck.
You got to go further. So let's do this then. Do we have questions? Do we have questions? Questions? Do we have questions? Here's the question.
Yeah, I was wondering if we really give a solution to a problem or to a question that is really valuable, which increases the value of our brand, etc. What's Google, ChatGPT, etc. Stopping them from just indexing into their own platform as well, leaving me out as an author? And so why do it?
yeah, this is super hard. So let's say you put all that effort in, you create the great resources, you help, you educate, you win, you inspire, and then ChatGPT or Google hoover all of that up, incorporate it into their LLM systems, and then when somebody Googles it, they just answer it. I don't know. Nobody knows. This is the challenge. And hopefully one of the answers is legislation. And that we go, okay, copyright is a thing and training right is a thing. There's some interesting stuff happening at the moment. I think the EU just published the first draft of the Responsible AI bill, which might look in a different direction from the ChatGPT stuff, where everyone says apparently it's okay for you to just hoover up stuff on the web. Legislation's one. The breaking up of Google, which is happening in kind of other pieces and elsewhere, might change some of this. Essentially, if collectively we decide it's not cool, then that might be the answer. Otherwise, yeah, really hard. And then you ought to get around that, you also have to move faster than these systems are trained and access and collate all of this, which is also very hard. Like you're talking about journalists on the ground, about velocity of publishing, of original experience and opinion. Yeah. I guess the other answer is don't compete in spaces where you're just providing an answer. Like if you're just like, what color are trees? Green and brown. What value are you adding anyway? Yeah, really, really hard. And moving further up and up that funnel might be the only thing we can do. Thank you.
Just one last question. Then we have closing remarks. Yes,
Is what LinkedIn is doing these days trying to brush your ego, saying you're the expert, we're asking for your opinion. Can you?
So LinkedIn is garbage. So LinkedIn are doing this thing. LinkedIn are doing this thing where they're like, we're producing this article about walnuts, and you look like you once ate a walnut, so please come and give us 500 words of content. That whole ecosystem is producing just bad articles. And a lot of people are trying to manipulate that for self-aggrandizement and ego, etc. But what's interesting underneath that is all of these types of pieces, which this is the Spark or something. It's a separate section of LinkedIn where a lot of that content ends up. These are very cleverly structured spam pyramids. So these are articles that link to other articles that link to other articles that eventually link to a coffee machine with an affiliate code. So very clever parasite SEO play, a bunch of very clever, not very nice SEOs leveraging this. But yeah, I would avoid LinkedIn like the plague. Do not get up at 5 a.m. and go for a run with Gary Vee. Do not get involved in this content. Very nasty.
And with that, we go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have closing remarks starting with patience, if you can stay for example,